And here we should be, writers, readers, drinkers, lend me your ears and your livers. Welcome to Writers Drinking Whiskey Open Bar, your boozy author panel, where the only suspense is if we are going to be cut off tonight. I am your host, Dwayne Marhensi, and I have never been cut off. Here we should be, writers, readers, drinkers, lend me your ears. And now I heard my background and it threw me off. I've never been cut off except for right now. And I am joined by an excellent panel today. So let's get to meeting everyone. But first, I do need to remember that today's episode is sponsored by you. So we have taken a radical patronage approach here. So all of our shows will always be live. If you are at all interested in supporting the shows so we can kind of keep it running, we have a member section on YouTube, and we'll be rolling out some more fun stuff, writing actual fiction related, probably starting in May. But I'll reach that. But if anyone's interested, you can join that. All the links will be on there, and I'm not going to belabor it. If you like, you can do it. So let's meet everyone, and in classic Writers Drinking Whiskey fashion, I like to do this in a fun way. So in the description, everyone can find links for everyone's episodes that's been on before or it was upcoming, which is actually in the member section already. But you can find that, descriptions, link to all their books and their websites. But I like to have a little fun with it. So to get us started here, what I want to know is what was it? So I had something. Okay, so the game to start us here is going to be bedside, curbside, or down the aisle. Anyone that knows the actual terms of this probably knows what I'm getting at. But so who do you want to spend a night with? Which author are you going to kick to the curb here? And which one are you marrying? So here's our three authors. I thought since we're going to be talking suspense, it would be fun to go with suspense authors that are known for suspense, or storytellers maybe more appropriately. So your choices are going to be Alfred Hitchcock, Edgar Allan Poe, and H.P. Lovecraft. And I did that just for you, Vaughn. I was very excited about the H.P. Lovecraft. So, and so I want to start kind of left to right here. So Gabi Lorino, they always prompt with her journal prompts. I have a little moniker for everyone today. I'm going to get better at these as we go. So if you don't like yours, you just tell me, and I'm going to improve. It's a process of improvement here. So who are you marrying? Who are you kicking to the curb? And who are you keeping at the bedside?
I will definitely marry Edgar Allan Poe. He's a Capricorn. He's like my husband.
Sure.
Happens to have the same initials and the same birthday as Elvis Presley.
Ooh.
A little bit of trivia for you guys.
Thank you for that.
Bedside. I'm gonna have to go with H.P. Lovecraft because that would be an interesting experience.
Sure.
And so that means I would have to kick Alfred Hitchcock to the curb.
Alfred Hitchcock to the curb. All right. No problem. All right. And then, Linda, you want to take us from... Oh, wait. No, don't take us from there until I can give you your moniker. The always frugalicious Linda Joffe Hull. You want to take us from there?
I think I'm going to have to kick Alfred Hitchcock to the curb, too. He's just not my type. And then it's a toss-up because I like you, believe that both Lovecraft and Edgar Allan Poe might make nice bedside companions for exactly the same reason. So I'm interchangeable on those two guys. You can, depends on the day.
Very good. Thank you for that. And then moving on to the unholy abomination of talent and dark musings, Vaughn A. Jackson. You want to give us your 2 cents?
Oh man, yeah, I think I'm with the consensus. I think I gotta kick Hitchcock to the curb. I love the dude's writing, but yeah, I gotta go. I think bedside is Poe because that dude's definitely a freak. And yeah, I'll take old Howard Phillips down the aisle just for the giggles.
Very good. Thank you for that. And then moving on to David Swinson, from punk rock booker to books.
Cop and detective.
I know I skipped a bunch, and if anyone's interested, go catch the episode. It's really interesting, your career path. But
no, Hitchcock was very mean to his actors and very cruel to women and and men actors, and so he's sort of weird, But Poe definitely went down the aisle, and Lovecraft would be interesting.
Like, who knows what he would dream up? I'm not sure. Like, Lovecraft is probably like starring in 50 Shades of Grey or something. Like, you don't know what that guy's popping on with. But awesome. Thanks so much, everyone, for that. And so let's get to the question of the day here. So, suspense. And I used kind of extreme examples with the three characters I used for our game there. But so how you create suspense in your writing, but even more generally in storytelling, kind of naturally. I know we're all writers, but you can extrapolate to movies and whatever else medium you may like. So, and anyone that wants to kind of start off, feel free, kind of jump in. If not, I'll just call names. Let's. Gabi, you want to take us?
I'll go ahead and go first. I'm not the greatest at suspense, but what I do is I kind of look at it like it's an ordered thing that has a whole lot, it's like a puzzle. It's got a lot of pieces in it. And in order to keep suspense, you can't just tell everybody the whole picture in the first chapter. You have to kind of pull things out, and usually at the end of the chapter, drop them in so that people are getting a better idea of where the story is going. So I think that would probably be the best way I could kind of describe it, is to take all of the information that you need to have to understand the story and then meet it out as the story goes along so that your reader stays engaged and you haven't given up all the information at the start. Mm-hmm. I mean, that would be fun for them, but then, they wouldn't be interested.
Sure. Does anyone have, so maybe we can start kind of definition wise, right? Like, what are kind of the ingredients, right? I think we could, anyone can Google what is suspense, but from a storytelling perspective, like, what are those main ingredients there? Like, what causes suspense? Like,
mm-hmm.
I mean, for me, it's just really simple. It's surprises that occur while still feeling natural. I mean, and mm-hmm. I'm not a real suspense writer. I'm police procedural, detective, crime,
sure.
and thriller. The Second Girl was a little bit of suspense, but not really. But just being surprised and at the right time, but natural. And I like what you said about the end of the chat. End of the chapters with like, so that you can't put down. You have to go to the next chapter to see what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So go ahead.
Kind of carrying off of that, I think I would say that suspense is a surprise that you see coming.
Sure.
You have all of the information to see, okay, we all kick Hitchcock to the curb, but his example of suspense is like, you show your audience that there's a bomb ticking down underneath the table that all of your characters are sitting at. The characters don't know the bomb is there, but the audience does. So the surprise needs to happen to your characters, but the readers need to see it coming. And that's where the suspense versus shock value comes in. Is if your audience, your readers can see it coming, but your characters can't, that's suspense. You're waiting for that reveal.
Yeah.
Right. No, I think that's brilliant. Go ahead, Linda. I know you were trying to.
Well, so in the strict sense, that's exactly what suspense is. But I would argue that as a person who's had a chance to write a lot of other things besides you calling me Mrs. Frugalicious, I believe that suspense, I think of it in terms of my reader, not what I'm writing necessarily. So it's anxiety, it's worry, it's excitement, it's anticipation, and it's that desire to know what's coming next on the part of my reader. And I do that hopefully by laying in hints from the very beginning, no matter what the story. I'm working on a story right now that's not suspense or thriller. And I want my readers to be like, oh man, something big is happening here. That's suspense, right?
Sure.
But what's happening? And that for me, hopefully propels them through the story itself to get the answer to that question.
Right. No, thank you
My
for that.
editor
Because
at Little Brown, just said it perfectly for me. Like one time, he goes, "You want freight for the running train. It doesn't matter if it's like a suspense book or thriller or crime.
Right.
It can be anything. You want freight for the running train.
right.
And, that can come with character, with anxiety, with background, with environment. It can come, tons of different ways. But
Right.
that's it. And Josh has been my editor since damn, like 2015, so 10 years.
Mhm.
And that was a very important thing I learned from him.
Sure.
Like suspense and anything.
Right. Well, because you can have it, because I think there's anticipation with uncertainty to it, right? Like you're anticipating something to happen, so you know kind of what the stakes are. I think our last open bar we had talked about stakes, but you kind of know what the stakes are or may be, right? And that can be big or large. That can be life or death, or it could be, hey, I need to get my kid on time, right? So like this morning, I'm driving my son to school like every other day. We're on time. There's really no suspense. Like neither of us are palpitating, right? Well, you're running late. Well, now the suspense is, do you get there on time, right? Oh, and then storyteller, right? Oh, you have a test first period. If you're not there on time, you don't get to take the test. Oh, and then now if you don't take that test, you're gonna fail, right? And all of those things in the reader's mind, because that's really all that matters at the end of the day, anyways, right? Is your reader, your audience, how they react to it. You're putting that suspense into their minds, and it might be with the characters. You might have dramatic irony where the characters don't even know it, and then the dramatic irony might be is at school. There's a bully that's waiting there to beat them up, and if you do make it on time, the bully's going to get a hold of him, or you have a kid with a gun, right? I mean, you can elevate it, exponentially, but I think that having that idea of anticipation. I love the phrase you used for it too, Vaughn, is like having the idea that something bad can happen or something negative can happen, unwanted can happen, with some kind of is it going to happen or not, and leaving the suspense to the reader. I think is a brilliant way. What was the term you said again, Vaughn? Actually, I thought I was going to memorize it, but I didn't because I'm a problem drinker.
The surprise. The surprise that you see coming.
The surprise you see coming. See, that's what I love so much. So very good.
Vaughn, that's interesting because that's why I like writing first person, is because you surprise yourself because I get into the character and I'm in his first person brain, and so I surprise myself, and so I like what you said.
And so, like, because I write a lot of horror, I play more with the idea of dread than suspense. And dread sort of builds on this idea of, like, yeah, something terrible is lurking around the corner. But what is it? When's it going to pop out? And you sort of have to seed these ideas that can give them. So when it does happen, your readers are like, oh, yeah, like that 100%, like, could have seen that coming. You want your readers to say that they could have seen it coming, even though they didn't. Then you look back and go, oh yeah, all those pieces line up to make sense.
Right.
Yeah. You can get suspense too with an unpredictable character,
Right. Yeah. Well, and I love that distinction too between dread and suspense, right? Because I think almost every story you need some kind of suspense. It can be friends with Ross and Rachel and going, will they, won't they, right? And you have some suspense as like a viewer. It's lightweight. There's some suspense there. That's not dread though, right? I mean, dread is a very different thing. So I think that's an important distinction there when you start talking about it is how profound that feeling, to be? So, to get back to your point, David, I maybe we can stick on here for a minute, is the point of view angle of this, right? Because even if we're talking screenwriting, or certainly for novels, right, there's always a point of view in both cases, really. And so sometimes you see that with the dramatic irony of it. You see that with tons of contemporary books. You have multiple third person narrators, and they're all kind of limited, right? So it's Sally has her view of the world. It's third person, but she doesn't know Harry's point of view. And then when Harry learns of something, and that could be dangerous or whatever to Sally, right? Or it could be embarrassing or whatever it might be. And then when you follow Sally, you actually as a reader get to know that. And that builds the suspense in you going, oh man, is she gonna, he knows that, I'm gonna take it to a low level one, because I figure a lot of our examples will probably be kind of Hitchcock and Edgar Allan Poe. But if we're talking Harry met Sally, I don't remember I remember the obvious scene from the movie at the diner. I don't think I remember the whole movie very well at this point. But that aspect is, if he knows that, hey, she's walking into this embarrassing situation, but she doesn't know she's walking into that embarrassing situation, as a viewer, as a reader, whatever you might be, there's a lot of suspense for you. You're like going, oh no, she's about to like walk in, and they know she was cheating, or they know she fudged this thing at work, or whatever it might be. So, any thoughts like from the group, just generally like how to manipulate point of view and the different aspects of that?
I think sharing the insecurities, sharing some interiority, sharing things that aren't quite a red flag just yet, but then I'm thinking about a story I've written that really, when I had it critiqued, people were freaking out at the end. and it's
Sure.
about an unhealthy relationship that turns into basically a stalker. And the woman is like, wow, I should be flattered that he wants to spend so much time with me, but I
Sure.
really miss my alone time and my friends. And and it just starts to compound until she makes a choice to not spend time with him, and then he kind of figures out where she went out and tries to kind of hunt her down there, and she's trying to escape. And it seems very low stakes. It seems like, oh, it's just this guy that wants to spend a lot of time with me, but she kind of knows, but she's fighting with herself.
Sure.
I enjoyed writing that story, and then just dealing with people critiquing it and going, oh my God, I'm freaking out,
Right. That's funny. I think that's a perfect example of that too, right? That idea of like, when we talk a lot in storytelling on raising the stakes, right? And I think that's a really good example of that. Is like, oh, he's stalking. Oh, whatever. It's not stalking, right? Like, we convince ourselves of these things, right? And sometimes maybe it's not. Maybe he's just he's into you, but maybe a little too forward for your liking, right? And then when you reject him or her or whatever it might be, they go away, and it's fine, right? Then there's the real stalker time, right? And so it's like, there's nothing, and then you get to see that, and so as a reader, yeah, you're pulling your hair out because you see the signs coming. What about first person, right? So like David had mentioned, like writing a lot in first person. And so it can be harder, especially if you follow that one person through the book. I know sometimes people will do like a multiple point of view with different first persons through it. But how do you do if you have first person, shoddy host of YouTube program that can never start on time and drinks too much? How do you do that? And then still like set it up so the reader knows more than they do, so they can get that dramatic irony sense, right? Without actually needing to go into another point of view to get there.
I think that's challenging. I've written 5 books in first person, and 5 or 6 books in limited third person, and I actually at this point, because I like to have multiple character points of view, I like third person generally speaking. Although first person is so freeing with certain kinds of stories. I could see for a police procedural, if you're in his head, you want to know everything he knows, and then you can find out what he doesn't know is what he's discovering. But when you have multiple points of view, I feel like when you're inside someone's head, you know everything they're thinking, right? So it's hard to fool yourself or fool the reader if it's more of an emotional journey kind of book, or I just think it depends. And I typically write with a co-author named Keir Graff, and so we just take different characters and that.
Keir? I know.
Oh, do you know Keir?
Well, yeah, we met on a tour a long time ago.
Yeah.
Oh, very good, very good.
I think we've just written our 5th book together. So is it our 4th or 5th? I think it's our 1, 2, 3, 4. 5th is coming out in 2026. So yeah, and we write different characters, and it's really fun in limited third person. But our characters get to discover what's going on with the other person, because I don't necessarily know when I send Keir a scene what he's going to write back.
What he's thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Thank you for that. And Keir, dear friend of the show, I'll link him up after the fact. But yeah, Keir's been on the show and been on some of these open bars. So,
but my first book, The Second Girl, and then the 2 that followed for the Frank Mark trilogy were all first person present tense. And I mean, I love that. I mean, I just like, the character, seeing everything through the character's eyes, and just like describing other characters through his POV, and and like we mentioned before with suspense, getting surprised. I mean, I get surprised more in first person present tense. I surprise myself.
Sure.
Sometimes it's not good. Like, oh, what did I just do? I just like really screwed up.
All right.
And hopefully I can, I guess I did write myself out of it, but yeah, I like first person present tense, and I've never really got into, I mean, all my books are first person, past tense or present tense, but I never really got into third person.
Right. Well,
I like being in the character's head. I like being the character.
Yeah, yeah. I feel you. I have that. I have the disgruntled actor bit of me that's like, I like to write in first person present because I get to really be that character at that moment. Even no matter what point of view I write in, I tend to think of it that way. But I think what's really interesting about that, right, is that so if you have that first person, I guess present or past, I don't think for this conversation it matters too much. But they may not realize something, right? Like, so you have a first person, to use a silly example, you have Spider-Man and his bully, I think Brock, something Brock is Spider-Man's bully usually, right? If you were doing his point of view and as a reader, you're following Brock along and he's not the brightest bulb in the shed or whatever, however the saying goes, a tool in the shed, whatever it might be. He might still see clues that the reader, who's probably smarter than Brock, will actually understand. And you might get that same dramatic irony effect of it, right? Is that they can see that, hey, what was that? There was that, I think they made a couple of them now, The Quiet Place, where it's you can't, the monsters know if you make noises and they're going to come eat you. If you're Brock, hey, he may not realize that for a long time, but he may see other things happening that alerts that to the reader, right? That might not be the greatest one-to-one example, but the concept is the same. Is you may not realize that character may naturally not realize it based on we all have, and smartness is just an easy limitation. We all have different limitations, right? I may not realize I've drank too much. Right? That's my limitation, the people watching this will go, he's drank too much, he needs to settle down, so, but you can still get that dramatic irony through the first person, I
haven't seen you lift a glass at all. I don't know what you're doing.
This is my second one, actually.
I'm lifting apple juice. Oh, I have a terrible head cold, and so I'm faking it. This is not whiskey. This is apple juice.
You let it out. That was the dramatic irony that we knew.
Yeah.
You know, dramatic irony can go the other way. The characters know it, and the audience doesn't yet. But
Yeah.
Oh, hey, Bill, did you taste that whiskey I sent you, the samples?
I have it. I'm going to taste it right now, actually.
Do it.
Yeah. I wanted to do it. I actually saved it. It's actually up. I'm going to point. Oh, I pointed right. So up behind my book here by the shelf, I have the thing there, and I was like, "Oh, I'm going to save this."
What
So
whiskey?
when Linda's on,
What is
I'm going to grab it.
My first cousin and her husband own a distillery in St. Louis called Still 630. And so I don't really drink whiskey.
I know that distillery. My sister lives there. My mother passed away there in St. Louis.
Oh, are you from St. Louis?
No.
Okay. I am. So anyway, whenever I can, I promote them, but it's a regional whiskey, so it's kind of hard. You can get it in some places, but not others. And so I had to do a sneaky little business to get some to Bill to try.
Thank you for that. I looked.
Well, can I
So
mention, actually take this time now? You see this
Of course.
right back here?
yeah.
Smoking Tails. That's my local guy.
Oh, cool.
He's actually the undertaker. the town outside of mine, the village.
Sure.
And he went on. Does anybody remember on the Discovery Show Moonshiners?
I do. I remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah. He actually won, like best, whiskey, moonshine on that show. Then he opened a distillery in a town called Phelps, right outside of our town. And, he does some bourbons, whiskeys, a lot of stuff, but he's award-winning and incredible. Yeah, so I totally support. And he doesn't distribute. He just,
Drinks it.
he's open like Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You can go there and buy it, or
Right.
That's how you know it's
Way
good.
to do it.
Hey man, so I'm gonna try. So actually, Linda, I looked. So I was having of a guest on that's later on in the show. I haven't scheduled yet, so I don't want to mention in case it falls through. But we were joking. He's like, "Oh, you're gonna send me whiskey?" And I was like, "Oh." And I'm like, I don't usually send whiskeys, but I'm like, you know what? It'd be really fun. I was like, oh, maybe I could send him some of this whiskey to give your family a little pump, right? We can be talking about it more. But I couldn't have it sent to me in California or to them. I think they're in Alabama. So I was like, I can't send it. So it fell through. So, but I'm going to try this, but I'm going to try it in my wooden cup because, I'm fancy with my. I don't know that wooden cups are better, but I enjoy them, so I'm going to try it. But cheers,
Sure.
everybody.
Cheers.
Yeah. Cheers with my
Cheers.
water.
Me too,
That-
Linda.
So that is really good, Linda.
You
So
didn't
that
have to
was
say that, but I know it is.
no.
Does it have a bite?
That is super smooth. If anyone watching saw my face, I did not flinch
Well,
at
Bill,
all. That was
describe
good.
it. I mean, are you feeling it smooth and then a bite at the end, or a bite in the front? Or
It is
Just
smooth.
mellow, oak.
There is a very tad bit of a bite at the end, which actually I like. I like to know
Yeah, me too.
I'm drinking something.
Yeah.
And it's probably just kind of oaky and vanilla-y. There's some vanilla there. I'm not the best at I'm a West Virginia boy. I like or I dislike. That's kind of the life I've lived. But that is tasty. That's a really good one. I'm gonna have to figure out how to get a bottle of this particular one.
Tell me, and I have a little back channel.
Well,
Linda,
do.
get it to my sister in St. Louis, and my sister will get it to me.
There you go.
I think they need to have a duty-free shop, except not really duty-free at the airport when you go to St. Louis, and
St.
everybody
Louis.
gets on the plane and buys some whiskey.
I
Right?
will tell my cousins. Yeah.
If you
Yeah,
can't
amen.
ship it, then you got to have a workaround.
That's right.
Mhm. Right. Well, that's what I always love when we go places. I love when we were in Tennessee. We went to the Uncle Nearest
Oh,
distillery.
Oh, yeah, Uncle Nearest. That's a
love
story.
that stuff.
You
Yeah,
know that story?
I know. Oh, yeah.
Tell the story.
The
About this
story is, yeah.
Yeah. So the I'm going to call it the Whiskey Notes version instead of the Cliff Notes version of the story is that Jack Daniel's master distiller was a black man named Nearest, And actually, you can see all kinds of old videos, like not videos. I'm sorry, photos. You would take photos with him, and this is back in the time when like a white guy with the black guy, like the faux pas, like the outrage. But Uncle Nearest was the brains behind all of Jack Daniels. Like he was the master distiller, yeah. But he never got much credit for it. So Uncle Nearest Distillery. Years later, it's a African American woman. She started it with the support of the family. So if you go out and it's in the original area, there's still
isn't the niece that they're related. It's his they were actually related, I thought.
I don't. So we went, and I don't think they're related. But so what I'll do is after the fact here, I'll put a link to Uncle Nearest Distillery with a description. So if anyone watching, right, you can Google and you can find it really quickly. But I think because we went to the distillery and they give you that, we got the tour, we did the tasting. I spent like $800 on whiskey because you can get all of them. Some of them you can only get there. And so I was like, I have to get those ones. And I went all the rest. So behind the bar, I have so many bottles of Uncle Nearest back there. But anywho, the end result is someone brought it back and they gave him the credit for it. So it's Uncle Nearest. You can find it. I think the 1854 you can find, if I'm remembering the year, pretty much everywhere. They have a rye.
Like Jack Daniels. I don't like Jack Daniels.
You're right. It is
I
nothing like
the
it.
Original Jack Daniels from Uncle Nearest was a lot different than the Jack Daniels now.
Right.
And but what they're doing is a lot. It is based on his recipe.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The closest thing to his recipe. So that's probably what Jack Daniels tasted like back then.
Right.
Which is actually it's a really fine whiskey.
Oh, it's really good. Yeah, it's really good. Yeah. Well, actually, you can find them. The 1854 I mentioned, you can find it for like $40, $45.
Not here.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. The kind of shelf brands, you can get a nice bottle for like $50. Yeah. Yeah. Even the expensive ones, I mean, it's maybe $100. Kind of, and I'm in California, right? So everything. And when we were in, so that $700 I spent when we were in Tennessee was for, I think, 8 bottles or something. So, it was a good deal. So, but anyways, to get us back, somewhat on track here. So we talked about point of view a little bit. I wonder then, so to tie it in a bit to stakes, right? Because you don't have any suspense if there's no stakes attached to it, right? Like if I'm not in suspense if you get somewhere on time, if there's no on time, right? Or I'm not in suspense if you're going to survive your cancer if there's no cancer, right? Like you need some kind of stakes involved in it. So how does that play? Like, so, it kind of open-ended here, but how do you, when you look at that, do you go, okay, how do you go about showing that to the reader, right? How do you display to them, this is what the importance of this is? So anyone that wants to jump in, feel free.
Can I take this opportunity? I'm sorry. I have this terrible head cold and I do not want to blow my nose.
Of course.
I'm gonna step off for a minute.
Okay.
Go to
My camera kicked me out, so can you repeat the question, please?
Oh, no problem. Can you hear me now? Are we back?
Yes, we're good.
Okay. Very good. I was just setting you up there. So my question was with suspense, right? Like a big partial of that is stakes, right? Like you need to know what, why it matters, right? With dread, like you had mentioned earlier, like what is like life or death or soul crushing, maybe it is, but you need to have some idea of what the stakes are. How do you, as a writer, what are the methods, techniques you can use to convey that to the reader?
You need to give your characters things that they care about. And I think when you do that and you set up the pieces for your suspense or for your dread, and you show how those things can be damaged or hurt or taken away from them, that right there is what sets up the stakes of that personal character's motivation. And those all come together to create the greater stakes of your stories. All these characters, different little motivations combining to face whatever you have them going up against.
Sure. Thank you for that. Gaby, Linda, you guys have anything to add?
I think if there's something that a character needs, you have to show what's getting in the way of it, and in doing so, you show them what the stakes are. So, for example, if it's a character that's injured, but they have to get to a certain place and do a certain thing, explaining and showing what is going wrong with them, what's going wrong with their body, what's in pain, what's stuck in a, I don't know, but
Sure.
I think you kind of have to show what's getting in the way, and what could happen if they don't do what they want to do, what they're trying to do. What is the downside of them not getting to the goal that they're, is it a button they're going to push so that the world doesn't blow up? Is it something like that? Or, it's like MacGruber
Sure.
on Saturday Night Live, everything blows up at the end. But I think it's, you show kind of both sides of it. You show what's preventing them from doing the thing, and you also remind the reader about why it's important that they do the thing and what's going to happen if they don't.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I think that's a pretty good point, right? There needs to be some kind of impediment to what's happening, right? Like there's some conflict there. There's something that's churning up, everything.
I would kind of argue that you kind of need to let that be known, or at least what you want the reader to think are the stakes right off the bat, so that they're running through the story with you, whether you're writing suspense or a mystery. If it's a mystery, it's a death, right? And it's got to be solved. If it's suspense, and I've written sort of suspense, you're setting up something dangerous that we need to find out, right? But if it's a thriller, you usually know what the problem is, and then how they're going to get their way out of it or solve the problem. My newest book with Cure that's coming out is called "I Did Not Kill My Husband." So at the title, possibly you've already got your idea of what the suspense is going to be. And when we were initially coming up with the book, we were really pretty certain that we were going to leave her, our main character, the one I wrote, to be, maybe it was dubious at first, because did she kill her husband or didn't she? And the reader could wonder whether she was a reliable narrator throughout the course of the book. But as we wrote it, it just didn't make sense that way. So you already know that you kind of want to believe her, and you want to trust that she didn't do it. And she's a social media influencer whose deal is that she's an ethical gold digger, and then her husband turns up dead and she ends up convicted of the crime, right? Because of course she killed him, right? But she didn't. So is she going to get out of it, and what's her journey going to be to find out who actually did kill her husband? So the suspense is in the title, I think. I hope. I do love that. So, I use that as an example. In the book that's killing me right now is when I'm writing my own. The first sentence is a mother tells her daughter, one of her daughters, "I killed your father," but all her fathers are alive. So, is mom got dementia? Is she a narcissist and she's trying to cause a whole lot of problems at a family event, or did she kill somebody, or some combination of the three? But I like to let readers know we're having a problem right at the beginning, whatever that is, and whatever I'm writing.
Yeah, and I think that's brilliant. There's the revealing the danger, but not the horror of it yet, right? So, hey, mom has just said that she killed my father, right? So there's some danger to me, right? Like the father's already dead. The danger to me, for the character is, oh my gosh, how am I going to feel about this? That my mom killed,
question. There's all these family questions. So, but I think when you're writing horror, or if you're writing science fiction, it's a whole different thing you're setting up, right, Vaughn? Because I've not written either of those exactly.
Sure. Well, which is fine. Like, I want to get to like the ideas of it, right? So like it's fine. Like, I don't think suspense is only sci-fi, horror, whatever it may be, right? Like it goes through the different genres. I mean, it goes, like I mentioned, like it goes through like lighthearted Thursday evening sitcoms, right? Like with Friends, right? There's a suspense element to it. So
you can be in danger of being eaten by wolves as easily as you can be in danger of losing your best friend. There's suspense in both of those, but one of them is a horror story. The other one is a romantic comedy, maybe.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Amen. Right. So like, hey, if my best friend, like, so it's not to belabor Friends, right? But there was the Ross or Rachel. And then later on in years when they jumped the shark a little bit with the Joey being into Rachel, right? And then the suspense isn't so much. I mean, I guess to some degree, will they or won't they? I think the suspense on that one was really, is Ross going to find out that his friend has done this? And is that friendship going to be
obsessed with Friends, aren't you?
Yeah.
I am. I'm very obsessed with Friends. I mean, like anyone my age, I did watch some Friends, but I don't actually watch it too much anymore. But
I heard an analysis of the Joey and Rachel thing, that if it hadn't been set up at the very beginning that Ross and Rachel would be a thing, that her character could have evolved and Joey's character could have evolved so that they would have been very happy together.
Sure.
And they would have made a lot of sense. But it didn't fit with the original narrative. It's kind of like How I Met Your Mother, where they kept having Robin in and out of the story.
Right. Yeah. I think How I Met Your Mother, I don't know if everyone watched that one, but I think to me that's a great example of not evolving with your story. Right, is that they had that idea. That was their idea, is that, hey, How I Met Your Mother. Oh, here's our twist is going to be, the mom's been, and spoiler alert for anyone that hasn't watched it, it's been off air for a long time. But if you want to tune away for 30 seconds, tune away for 30 seconds. But the whole conceit is it's a dad telling the kids, his son and daughter, about how he met their mother. And meanwhile, he's telling them his whole romantic history, including the first girl in that history, Robin, that he loved. And then they don't get together. And at the very end, he meets Mom, and it seems happy, but it turns out Mom's actually been dead in the story for years. And he's told the whole story just so he can ask out Aunt Robin. And everyone, I shouldn't say everyone, most people, myself included, were very unhappy with the ending because it didn't make any sense. Because you're like, you're like, it doesn't make any sense. I don't follow this. Like, it didn't seem like that relationship seemed like it ran its course very quickly, and it didn't seem like much was going on with it anymore. But because that was the plan, and they stuck with it. And so there was actually no suspense related to will he get with Robin at the end, right? Like it's interesting talking about in the framework of suspense, because actually you can see where it fell through a little bit, and the fact that by that point at the last season, Robin is marrying Barney. That whole last season, I think, is at their wedding. So there's no suspense. Will Robin get with Ted? And will that work? So there's no suspense. So when they do that twist, and there's still no lingering suspense to it, you just go, well, nothing was dangling from this. Nothing makes me care. It doesn't actually, for a reader, give you any stakes.
You've already seen them go round and around and around for what, 8 years?
Right.
And you're just like, ugh, really?
Right.
Well, isn't Care the the key word here, because it's all about making you care about the story, whether it's the character or the journey the character's going on, or the crime getting solved, or the relationship, or anything. It's all about caring. And I think suspense and caring are very much intertwined, no matter what your genre is.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Right.
Mhm.
There is
Right.
no
Not the same thing, really.
Right. Well, amen. Right. You don't have any anticipation if you don't care. Right. Like, and I've certainly been here in my life at different times. Right. Like, do you get to work on time? If you care about work, you feel some anticipation. Right. Like that can make you feel stressed. If you don't care and you hate your job, you don't care and you hate your job, right? Like you don't feel any anticipation. There's no suspense. So the reader is the same way.
The characters really, like what you were saying, Linda, is like, I mean, you have to, whatever the character is, whether it's a good bad guy, a bad good guy, or whatever. I mean, there has to be an element of caring for. You have to care for him as a
Right.
reader, or else I'm just going to put the book down.
Right.
But I mean, so whatever ever kind of character you're dealing with, yeah, you want to care for him. And,
Sure.
You don't have to make
also, you want
people-
to care about what he or she is trying to do, and
Right.
that's what I love so much about Frank Marr, is that, he was like, I don't remember what he's a good guy with a bad habit, but I never really understood. I had fun writing him, but I never really understood what I inadvertently did with him until like all the librarians came that loved him. I mean, the librarians that loved him, and I'm going, how do you love this guy? How can you like him? I mean, he's like, he's totally effed up, but they love him, and so that can propel the story too, and obviously, I mean, the character is incredibly important.
You don't need to write characters that your audience necessarily likes. You have to write characters that they care about and can root for in some capacity.
Yeah,
Right.
definitely.
Yeah, amen. Well, I think because at the root, right, is that stories teach us that we matter, right? That our experiences matter, and that by reading fiction, reading books, we're learning that not only does my experience matter, this other experience that's outside of me, matters, right? And so we can all acknowledge, generally, right, on our best selves, like we're not perfect, right? Like we all kind of know that, like even if we want to, like, I don't. I'm very happy, like admitting I'm not perfect, but other people, like, it's a little harder to get to because they're probably closer to perfect. But
Yeah, exactly.
amen, Linda.
I
Yeah,
don't
you're
relate at all.
I'm
Right.
glad someone else said it before I did. I don't want to be that person.
I
right.
already knew that about you, Vaughn.
But I mean that's kind of the idea. Like, so if you get them to care, right? The only way there's actual stakes is if you care about what happens, and you only care about what happens if you care about the people it happens to. So, I think that's an excellent point. So, where do you guys, one of the things that happens quite a lot with, I think early on talking about, suspense and things is cliffhangers, right? And that is certainly a television trope. I'm like, and I maybe mistakenly went on a little bit of a binge on like more modern writers, recently that haven't been on the show, but I'm like, oh, I'll read the, XY writer, and every chapter ends on the cliffhanger, even if it's like just a guy going objection, and then the chapter ends, and then it's the do you see was it upheld, and my favorite thing, I'd like to say this to my wife, at one point in my life, I just want to say, I'll allow it, and have that go. Like, all I want, like my kids to be arguing, like, Dad, you can't do that, da, da, da. And me go, I'll allow it, and everyone just listen, You know, like we just ended it there. But how does how does everyone feel like generally? And not saying not to belittle cliffhangers, but how does everyone feel generally on that? You can have cliffhangers in a book, but certainly in chapters is a very normal thing, right? So how do you go about doing that in a way that feels justified and meaningful for the reader?
Natural. If it's not natural, it doesn't work for me. I mean,
Sure.
but you know, I mean, there are authors like my buddy Matthew Quirk who does it very well with Night Agent, you know, which is now like Netflix, you know, it. But you know, he's got tons and tons of cliffhangers, and he does it naturally, you know. I
Sure.
mean, that's you know, that's what it's about for me.
I try and use chapter breaks as where you would want commercials to be if you're watching a TV show episode. I've noticed if you watch TV shows, the commercials are never in a place where it's conducive to you wanting to continue watching the show. They'll cut like right in the middle of someone's sentence and then come back
Right.
10 seconds after they finish what they were saying. You have no clue what they're saying. But I use chapter divisions as like, okay, I would want to fade to commercial right here because it would leave people questioning what's going to happen when the 45 seconds of Colgate tooth whitening toothpaste is done.
Sure.
So I try and use them not even necessarily cliffhangers, but just ending in a way that people want to be like, okay, what happens next? So that might be a cliffhanger. That might be, you know, a big reveal, introduction of a new character, but just something to make them turn that next page. Because at the end of the day, that's what you want. You want them to turn that next page and then turn that next page and keep doing that for all 385 or 400, however many pages your book ends up being.
Mm-hmm. Sure. When is it too much? Because I've certainly read books where I feel like it's getting a little like I'm like, can you pay this off? Right? Like, do you have a cliff? Right? So you have a cliffhanger, you need to pay it off at some point, right? And sometimes it's the next chapter, but at some point, so like that example I used, it's on an objection, right? And that's my cliffhanger. You come to the next chapter, and then you find out if the objection was upheld or overruled, right? But you're still in the trial, right? Like nothing's been paid off truly besides that one little bit. When do you hit because I feel this, I'm very selfish in asking this question, as in almost all my questions. When is it like too much, right? When do you hit hey, like this isn't building suspense anymore. It's frustrating the reader, right? Like, and I think maybe everyone doesn't agree, but I think generally, like, you don't want to like frustrate the reader, right? You don't want them to get to the point they're putting it down because they're a little frustrated because you're never paying anything off, right? Like frustration is I have an expectation and you're never meeting it, right?
Yeah. If you're ending every single chapter with ... I think you've gone too far.
Sure. It's just an ellipsis. Like, that's how we end everything, yeah.
I mean, with me, it's just like I write and then the end of the chapter just happens, you know, and
Sure.
Sometimes it happens on a, you know, like cliffhanger or whatever, but I don't look for those,
Right.
you know, but it happens like, oh yeah, it ends here. It ends
Right.
here, you know, because I want to know what's going to go on in the next chapter. So I'm going to write it. You know? And so,
Sure.
I mean, I don't outline, so I don't know what the
Right.
fuck I'm doing. You know, I'm right by the seat of my pants, you know. So I mean, I'm just like the reader, you know. And
Right.
I mean,
Amen.
that's what's important to me.
Amen.
Well,
I
if you,
outline and I have no idea what I'm doing half the time, so it's not
Yeah.
it's not just a seat of your pants person.
That's the best way to write.
Right.
There we go.
I both outline and I write by the seat of my pants at the same time, and I don't think there's a right answer to that. You know, how many times have you been at a party or at an event and someone's telling you a story and you're so bored that you want to die or just like, you know, get your way out of there? And so I think of every story is, if I'm standing there like I can't get away from this person, and they're going to tell me, I got up, and then I washed my face, and then I brushed my teeth, and then I peed, and then I peed again. I don't need to know what happened in your day that was interesting, and that is your chapter.
That's good.
Right.
That's excellent. Yeah.
And if you're going to make people eat dinner together, then something better happen at dinner. Someone better have an eating disorder, or something better happen at dinner other than please pass the salt. Oh no, this is a very good, Chateaubriand. Oh, I hate that. I'm a vegetarian. Like you're boring me. So
Right.
a chapter is the interesting and important information that the reader needs to know distilled, and then you get out of there.
Yeah, every scene has that. I believe that, honestly, what you're saying. What you're writing, everything has to make sense. Or if it doesn't belong, why have it there?
Sure. Sure.
I'm going to be bored. I'm going to put the book down.
Right.
Right.
It's like Chekhov's gun, right? Like if
I'm
there's
telling
a
you,
gun,
that's
at some
what
point
great
pay the
editor-
gun off. Like, why are you telling me about a gun?
That's what a great editor is for, and because I will write like that sometimes, and I'll just get self-indulgent and write bullshit,
Sure,
and then
sure.
my editor will go, David, does this really do you
As that's really necessary, Mr. Swinson. And you know what's funny is it reminded me, like, Linda, I loved your example so much there because like the whole idea of people eating dinner together, right? And maybe something's happening, right? That could be really interesting. If there's a bomb under the table, which was someone had mentioned Hitchcock, who said, "Oh, there's a bomb under the table." Well, if you actually know there's a bomb that has a ticking time, whatever it might be under the table, and then the fact that they're talking about dinner or the kids or whatever, as a reader, that that makes sense to you. That makes sense to the story. That's meaningful and it's interesting. If there's no bomb, well, then why are we hearing, these peas are great, honey. I don't like, and
No, thank you for that, Linda. You actually re-inspired me because I forgot what you just said. So I appreciate it very much.
Well, I've made the terrible mistake of getting madly addicted to TikTok this last little while.
that is a terrible mistake.
And let me
Shame on
explain. Let me be fair. My character was a social media influencer, and I did not understand that. And as Keir said, you took one for the team on that because he wasn't going to do it. So
Sure.
as a result, there's one thing that I do understand, which I did not understand as a writer, but as a viewer, a younger viewer of content, not that I'm young, the attention span and the interest level can go away really fast,
Right.
fast, which isn't to say that you need to make your chapters really fast, but make your stuff interesting. So they want to get to, and so your idea of when a chapter should end, at the point where it keeps them interested to go to the next thing, almost to scroll to the next TikTok, if you will, within the story. And it's unfortunate that's the case, but the way we consume books, media, everything else has changed as a result of social media, and it's just a fact.
Sure. Right. Well, it's modern life, right? Like everything progresses, right? So,
Regresses.
yeah, as it probably is, frankly. But I think what's interesting, like, is pacing, right? I think you just like nailed it, right? Is that there's a pacing aspect to it. So, in 100 years ago, the pacing could be a lot slower, right? And sometimes, this happens now. People are very into slow burns sometimes with their prestige, cinema. But even then, I think sometimes it goes too far, even for me, and I'm fine with it. But a great example being Breaking Bad. Like, a lot of people have a hard time with Breaking Bad the first season because it starts off very slow. And then people love it, and I hear it goes wonderful ways. But I'm one of the people that went, I don't know what's happening, and I'm a little bored. My daughter was very encouraging of my wife and I watching it, and we tried, but we kept kind of teetering out. And I still actually intend to go watch it at some point because another example of that was Schitt's Creek. I don't know if anyone watched it.
I love
Completely
it.
different. Yeah, okay, very good. So Schitt's Creek being opposite end of the spectrum. With the pilot episode of Schitt's Creek, I feel like is a pilot episode. And the first couple you have a hard time kind of caring for them. But
You get through it a few episodes before you really get immersed and love the characters,
Right.
and you can't stop.
yeah, and then you love it for a sixth season. And me and my wife rewatched Schitt's Creek over and over. Like that was our nighttime show for a good length of time. And it's how do you get them to, like, pacing wise, from the storytelling perspective, right? Is how do you get from and sometimes slow pacing is good. Sometimes you need to speed it up. I think sometimes that slow burn can be really effective, right? Like it can really mean something to you once you hit it, but you still have to keep people with you, right, on that slow burn. And I think modern, I feel, is very funny. Is that there's the TikTok, and then there's the prestige television that's just nothing's going to happen for 8 episodes, and sit and binge this on Netflix for 6 hours before something pivotal happens. How do you manage the pacing aspects of building suspense?
I think the important thing about a slow burn that a lot of people will forget, and that's why you end up with these boring, like you said, 6 episodes of nothing happening, and then finally something happens. People forget that a slow burn still needs to have a burn. There needs to be something there kind of kicking you forward. Even if you're just poking the stick to get the fire a little bit brighter, there has to be that poke.
That's where the dread comes in, that you probably are thinking about every scene as you're
And like
writing.
right now, the suspense is my wife is sneaking behind me because she wants to get something behind the bar. She's literally hiding behind the chair, I think, right now. I don't know where she went, but we have suspense. Where did she go? Oh, I literally don't know where she went. She disappeared. She must have already been behind the bar. So
You vanished.
But I'm sorry, not to interlude. She was like, "Can I sneak behind you?" I'm like, "You just go, go behind me. This is we're live streaming on the YouTube. It's fine." So
yeah, you're right, Linda, with the whole idea of dread. It is very much more of a slow burn than your traditional suspense. You want to build that up and layer it on thicker and thicker, and then finally, when you have that reveal, that cathartic payoff, you want it to drop the dread a little bit, but like you want to kind of like that boom, and then kind of a bit of a reset, because you don't want to overwhelm your reader, but you want to make sure that you're still keeping it at a level where you can continue to build and build and build to the next big thing. And so a lot of horror like that does tend to be, quote unquote, a slow burn. But the important thing, again, like I said, is that it is burning. It is putting that fire under you to make you, you want to keep going, but it's more of a, as opposed to I want to see what happens next. It's more of a, oh God, what's going to happen next? Like, oh no. Like,
Well, I don't want to see what happens next.
Sure.
Peek around the corner because I have to know, but oh God, I don't want to know. Like, what's over there?
Right.
I know we're talking books, but what I think is really a good example of what you're talking about is we just watched Heretic.
Yes.
And my gosh, that is like, okay, well, this is creepy. This is slow. This is like freaking creepy. I don't think I can watch anymore. I want to turn it off. I can't turn it off. I gotta watch it. I want to turn it off. I want to turn it off. And then
Every time
it's not satisfying to me though. But I think that's a good example of what you're talking about. Where it's just you have to keep watching, but it's slow. But there's something there,
There's always something that I think with the slow burns. There's always something there, right? So like it's the fire, right? Like, and I love that. I love that you use that example like so much, Dave. Is that you can have a small fire that's really delightful to sit around all night, right? And then sometimes you overbuild it and it's flaming and you have to back away, right? You back away your camp seat because it's so hot, right? If you don't have, you have to have some balance to that. There might be something there though that is, hey, I'm really like, I'm concerned with what's happening, right? Like it's burning, but I'm interested in kind of sticking through and seeing like how does this play out? You know, you need a bit of how did this play out.
I'm getting that with John Darnell's book, Devil House. I don't know if any of you know John Darnell.
Yeah, from
Mountain Goats.
Mountain Goats.
He's,
I have one of his books on my nightstand, which I have not
he's
finished.
brilliant. Okay,
That's what I've heard.
John Darnell and Nick Cave to me are like the most brilliant guys ever. You know, because Nick Cave can write an incredible screenplay like The Proposition or whatever, and and write a book, and and then do the most incredible freaking music since the 80s, and he's on,
Sure.
I do playlists for all my books, and he's on every freaking playlist.
Very good, yeah.
But John Darnell is the same way with the Mountain Goats. He's telling stories in all of his songs, and Devil House is just one of those slow burn books that it keeps building and building, and you go, damn, you can't put it down.
That is on my bookshelf, I think. I'll need to check it out then.
Right.
Yeah, sorry, what? It's on your bookshelf?
Oh, yes, that's on my bookshelf, so I'll need to check it out. So I'll put
You need to read that. Yeah, it's a good book. Great
Right.
book.
Yeah. But I think that's a great way, like there's the building of it, right? So if you have a fire, if you don't add logs to it, right? You don't add something to it, kindling, whatever it is, if it doesn't build, we're all waiting around and it's dwindling. We might wait around. That may be really cool. You may wait around to see how those embers burn out, right? Like that could be something you could use. Not often, right? But that is something you could use is how does everything burn out here? But otherwise, you need to build this to the point that you hit, the conflagration, right? Like you hit something that is noteworthy for everyone. So I wonder then. So I'm always struck by there's the Hemingway quote, and I'm going to butcher it because I'm not much for quoting people in general. But I love me and hate me some Hemingway, but there's the quote that all great writing kind of comes from the body, right? And it strikes me for a very different author is Edgar Allan Poe, which we talked about, right? Like the telltale heart, right? You have the very bodily function of the heartbeat, and that becoming the heartbeat of the story, as it goes, and the interiority of the story. Like, how do you get that into a character? So how do you go from character in that very general sense that you have generic sense that you have a character, right? It can be Flo from Geico, it could be what's his face from Breaking Bad, it can be Ross and like Rachel, like, right? Like you have out there character. How do you as a writer take that and then bring that into the reader's heart, right? Into the reader's body, right? So what are the techniques of that? So building out that interiority so that then, the reader actually feels that suspense. I didn't make any sense. That's what I got from that question.
You did. No, it's just, I
have a slight hearing problem, and I didn't understand what Hemingway said. Did he say all great writing comes from the bottle? From the bottom?
Body.
Or the body. Okay, yeah, that was
also the bottle with Hemingway.
Very true. And also the bottle from me. So, this is why I'm quoting Hemingway, is that we're both going. And actually I tried my next bottle of still 630. I don't know if we can see it. I'm not sure which one this is.
Good.
Can we see it?
Go in there.
Anyways, bottle number 2.
So now that you've clarified that word, And I tell people what I think I hear, and we all get to laugh about it. When you're creating a character, there has to be something relatable about them, or else nobody's going to be interested in them. So it's like you said, like the good person with a little bit of bad, the bad person with a little bit of good. Maybe they're like a venture capitalist, but they really like saving puppies, or you know what I mean? Maybe they're this angelic
It's a
force.
Gordon Gecko, but he has a fascination with puppies.
He has a dog rescue in his apartment.
Sure.
I don't know. If it comes from the body, it means that somebody has to feel something in order to care. And in order to care, I think you have to think about, what will I have empathy for as a reader? What will I be drawn? I'll pique my interest and make me feel, well, he loves his mom. He's doing this terrible thing, but he loves his mom, or well, she's totally throwing her choices away, but she's got great style. Like, what is it about someone?
Sure.
What is it about someone that makes you want to keep reading?
Yeah.
That's my take.
If I don't care, I don't know how the reader would care.
Right.
I'm a
Right.
reader, So, yeah, no, I agree.
I don't want to contradict Hemingway because I don't have even close to the credentials to do that.
You can contradict Hemingway because I love and hate him. Like it's fine.
That's
Okay.
I understand what he's saying, and I think I'm saying the same thing. For one thing, I think the greatest writing, at least that I've ever created, which is really de minimis, but is when I feel like it gets channeled through me, not like I wrote it myself. So,
Sure.
for instance, I'm writing, and then if I read it later and I think, who wrote that? That's actually kind of good. I feel like it comes from something bigger and greater than me. And I would
Yeah.
call that the human experience, that hopefully I'm channeling that. And that's what would make a reader relate to something I wrote. And it's one of my greatest challenges as I'm writing. I have a hard time coming up with body language besides she smiled, he smiled, he nodded, she nodded.
Yeah, no, upward nod,
Upward nod. I don't believe in sucking on the teeth. I don't think people do that very often.
Yeah, sure.
All those things that we use. And sometimes I marvel at other writers' abilities to do that. When I'm writing with Kier and he's fixing things, he's like, your character smiled 64 times in this scene. I'm like,
That monster.
Yeah, but that monster Kier graph. What I can do is fantastic. But what I can do is take my own experiences, and I think that's maybe what Hemingway's taking about body. I love to put people in awkward, sort of funny, very human situations because we can all relate to them. The one that's coming to mind right now is I have a character that's going to prison for life, and she has to go to the bathroom with 3 other characters and this is probably a police officer over your years. There's bodily functions have to happen in group settings in prison. And
That's weird.
to me, that's the most horrible thing I can think of. And so I had her having to go to the bathroom with 2 other inmates that were going on their way to prison. And that's how you relate to her, that she went from living in Beverly Hills and having a toilet that heated up and, had a bidet in it, to being in a crusty bathroom along the highway with 2 other inmates. To me, that's where we all go, oh God, that's my worst nightmare. And
Right.
that's how you have people relating to, or at least understanding a situation that they're not in and hopefully
Right.
relating to them. So when I think body, I think maybe scatologically, but,
Fair
trying to
enough.
get
Fair enough. I like that
realistic things so that a reader can go, yeah, me too.
though.
Or
Right.
that happened to me once.
Right. No, and thank you for that. I love that. And I want to contrast that immediately with Vaughn. I know you do a lot of and I'm gonna butcher the term because I'm an old man. Kaiju, right? Like the kind of the greater, like the giant monster, like the Godzilla would be a easy example of a kaiju, right? How do you do it in that aspect? Like, because you need to have the the terrifying, almost otherworldly monster, right? And you still need to have characters that have the feeling that we can relate to. How does that relate to what you do on that end?
So one of the interesting things about kaiju is that if they are, I think, the sole focus of your story, you are losing out on a good 75% of what makes it a relatable story. Don't get me wrong, I love going to a Godzilla movie that's like 95% Godzilla punching people in the face. But I will never say that they are a good story. They're fun. They're fun to watch.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, what you are really showing in a kaiju story, much like in a natural disaster story, is how humans respond to this world upsetting thing. I mean, you can take Godzilla and replace him with a hurricane or a massive earthquake or a fire that's spreading. Well, okay, that's as many.
I mean, where I am, right? The Eaton fire. We talked about kind of pre-game here, right? The Eaton fire was along the foothills of the San Gabriel Mountains, right where I'm at. So, yeah, I get you completely.
But I think the thing that also gets forgotten is that when you have this titanic creature, particularly when you're doing kaiju versus cosmic horror, is the creature itself also needs to be sympathetic. It needs to be understandable. It needs to be like, so the guy who created Godzilla, Ishiro Honda, has a quote where he basically says that it is not monsters' fault that they're hated. They're too big, too strong, and too powerful for this world. They come into conflict with us simply by the matter of their scope. And that in itself is a really thing that people neglect when they write kaiju stuff. Is it's just like, oh, big monster, scary, But
sure.
It's at the end of the day, it's a creature or it's a sentient thing or it's a something. It's alive as well as your character. It is a character in your story. So you have to kind of position the suspense and the wants and the needs and the stakes for your human characters against what this monster needs, what it is doing, what its biological functions might be, and how they contrast. That's where you get most of your suspense in the kaiju genre, is how the monster's needs and the human's needs, which often ends up being, we need to not be trampled versus like, I'm hungry or something.
Yeah, sure.
But like, you need to show how those contrast and how it affects their interaction.
Right. Thank you for that. It's so funny. As you were saying that, like, it is so interesting, right? Is that fire at its simplest, right? And I had mentioned the Eaton fires, which were just near and dear to me, but also like I live on the foothills. Like we deal with fires in California pretty regularly. Like this isn't a new thing, but fire also, it's a living thing. It's just consuming something, right? It's consuming oxygen. It's consuming as it goes. So, but when you hit the crazy extent of it, right? When you see videos with like the blue fire or the fire tornadoes and everything, and that's when it feels like a kaiju, right? Like it feels so outside of the human experience, and that's why I think people outside of California don't always understand the California wildfires. Because sure, you can say like we can manage it better, and we should, because we have a nuclear power plant alongside all of our mountains, right? Like there's just it's waiting to explode, right? And fair enough, you can I wouldn't mock, feels a little heavy for that, but you can judge us for that. Like how well do we manage our nuclear power plants? But the fact that just naturally it's there. As you know what I mean, like the kaiju or whatever it might be, it's a beast, and it's not. It doesn't care about the humans, but it has its own cares, right? And in the case of fire, it cares about consuming. It cares about spreading.
But also, fire is also, so like in the case of like a lot of the forests in California, the fire is also it's a rebirth. A lot of the plants there, they pollinate through fire, the destruction of the fire, so they can regrow, right? So fire is also, it's a catalyst for creation as much as it is for destruction.
Yeah.
And
Amen.
if you've seen the 2014 Godzilla movie, and then the TV show that followed after it, Monarch: Legacy of Monsters, they talk about how Godzilla, after he was in San Francisco, oddly ironically enough, after he was there and all the destruction that he caused, all this plant life started growing rapidly because of his radiation. It caused it to grow,
Sure.
and nature sort of took back over control. And so there's this idea that Godzilla is this catalyst for nature, which at its core is sort of opposed to what humanity does. We tend to unnature things and make them more hospitable for us, but a chrome city is not conducive for trees or animals. So this disjointed desire of, like you said, the fire and human existence, or Godzilla and human existence, kind of, it shows the parallels there as well.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
Bill, I'm sorry. This head cold is getting the best of me. It's like really, really bad. So I'm gonna have to bow out.
Okay.
But
No problem.
I really had a great time. And Linda, I want you to ask Kieran when he's going to come out with his next children's book, because I have a couple of kids that want to read it. Oh, you're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry, my dogs were barking. His most recent one is with James Patterson. He's
Yeah, I
done
know.
books with,
Jimmy. Yeah, I know that one.
yeah, and I don't know what he's doing, but he's got a couple that are in the pipeline. There's one that I've read that our agent is out shopping. That's delightful.
Yeah. Yeah, James wanted me to write a book with him a long time, 8 years ago or something. And I was in the middle of, and I would have loved to, but I was in the middle of writing my third book, and I couldn't. But to my regret, I mean, I was an idiot. But
It's an interesting process. I know.
that's what I hear. I hear you get calls at 4 a.m, 3 a.m. I hear it. But I've met him. He's a very nice man, is
Yeah.
what I hear also. But you all, thank you so much. I am really, I'm dying here. I'm sorry, my nose is.
Not a worries at all, David. Thanks so much for
Yeah.
soldiering on.
But no, no, it's fun as usual. I love your podcast. It's a wonderful, fun podcast. So hopefully, next time I'll, be feeling better. And
Right.
it was a pleasure meeting you all. And so I got to
See you again.
go.
Hey, man.
See you guys later.
Yeah,
Bye.
yeah. Good night, sir. So, I think that's a nice place to leave us. So, I want to make sure we leave some time for anyone that's following along. I'm gonna do so. Anyone that's been on the show recently, I do a portion I call shots. So, it's gonna be rapid fire questions. But anyone that's watching, let us know. So any feedback you have, any other questions, whatever. It doesn't have to be questions. Feedback, throw it in. And I'll ask it here. Otherwise, I'm going to proceed on with our shots. So is everyone ready for our shots portion of the show?
Got a
I
little bit left.
didn't know that was a requirement.
If we cleanse the palate really quick.
Yep, clear the palate. I have...
Just drink water?
Oh, of course. It's rapid fire questions. You don't have to...
Oh,
You
okay.
have to have a beverage.
Shot for question. Come on, shot for question. Okay.
Amen, Vaughn. Amen. That's the spirit I like, actually. But I try to be.
Whiskey.
What's that?
I thought that was whiskey, the spirit you like.
I do like my spirit. I do have my whiskey here too. I still have plenty.
I switched from scotch to whiskey, so now I'm in the spirit of things.
Amen. Okay, so let's start with this. And again, anyone watching, if you have questions, feel free to jump in or comments. So, what is the strangest, potentially self-incriminating thing you've Googled this week? And we're going to start with you, Gaby, because I just go left or right because I'm a simpleton.
Okay. I haven't read it, but there is a law that got through the House of Representatives, but it hasn't gone through Senate yet, and it hasn't been signed by the president. But apparently, It's called the SAVE Act, and I might get in trouble for talking about it, but apparently they're trying to make it so that you have to take your birth certificate or another serious legal document to vote. And if you don't have the same name legally as what's on your birth certificate, you're not allowed to vote. And so I'm having a little bit of meltdown about that. And I just went to the county and ordered my passport yesterday because that's a workaround. So I was trying to make sure that I was doing the right thing, spending my $180 on processing and
So that was the self-incriminating portion of it.
I don't know if it's self-incriminating. I don't know. What kind of environment are we in now? Am I allowed to look that up?
Oh no.
It's
That's
getting
the
pretty
risk.
ugly, like really fast.
Mm-hmm.
We just careened off the darkness cliff. Okay.
I mean, that's how you feel. That's how you feel. That was the self-incriminating thing. So,
I mean, I am a citizen here, and I am currently legally allowed to vote. So,
okay.
could be wrong? I don't know.
Fair enough. Linda, you want to take it from there?
Is Mitch McConnell dead?
He might as well be.
So I'm right with you on that. And because I'd heard a rumor, and then I looked up necromancy because it had to do with P. Diddy. And there were a bunch of other.
The P. Diddy
Googled
of it
some
got
weird
in
things
there.
to the point where my Google asked me if I wanted private browsing, and I'm on it now, and I can't look at what I looked at. And every week, every day, there's something I'm looking up that's super weird. So I have no shame about it either.
All right. Amen. Amen. Vaughn, you want to take it from there?
So I don't remember exactly what the searches were, but for one of my novellas that I'm working on, Google did show me the suicide hotline phone number, like for a good 3 or 4 of the searches that I had to put in. As far as more recent memory, how far can you pull a person's intestines out before they die?
That's a good one.
You're gonna have someone knocking on your door. Excuse me, sir.
I'm a writer, I swear.
Don't open it. Do not engage. Very fraught time.
Yeah. Amen. I've had so much about the next book I'm working on that's related to bite marks and ghost guns. So I'm waiting for people to show up to think I'm 3D printing ghost guns and biting people, and and waiting to see how it goes. So we'll see. But
Hitman Vampire.
Well, no. So and they're mostly thrown out now. But there was a time where there was bite marks on like a dead body, right? It's a literary thriller, but if you had bite marks, right, you can kind of compare them. Mm-hmm. But my bite marks, if you put something in my mouth, are very different than how they're going to look on my shoulder, right?
Right.
And so there was until recently that was admitted into court. Pretty regularly, like you would, but because there's so much things, it's not like a fingerprint exactly, right? But it feels like it is. And so that was the aspect. So the story I'm writing has a lot to do with that and how that feels for you as a reader, but then also for a character that's not part of the legal system versus a character that is. And then ghost guns being like you can 3D print guns. There's different types. There's the 3D printed, and then there's the kits. And you can combine and you can contrast, but and it's still a little bit of a legal conundrum that people fight around with, but that you can still do, right? That you can still go, you can still go get some polyacid, spools and print a gun that is useful or not, right? And so, So I'm like, people are going to think I'm biting people all the time and then printing guns to kill them with. And I'm saying here, government, I'm not. I'm not trying to. I'm not biting anyone, and I'm not trying to print guns. My wife did in fact buy us a 3D printer. I didn't know, and I'm not trying to
Perfectly.
print any guns with it. Next one here for our shots portion: anonymous reviews, the guillotines, or the stocks. What do you do with people that leave anonymous reviews? Are you putting them in guillotines? Are you putting them in stocks? Or are you ignoring the prospects of the question altogether and choosing a different thing?
I mostly ignore reviews. Every now and then I'll do like a slight scroll for just to see if there's anything funny. I love funny reviews on my books. They,
Sure.
1 star or 5 star, but otherwise, those are people reading my books, not for me.
Yeah, I don't mind. So I kind of sweat out the professional reviews a little bit at first to make sure that when they come out in the trades that we get a good review or whatever on the book. And when I say we, I'm not speaking the royal we. I'm talking about me and Kier, or Kier and I. However, I used to read a lot of reviews when I was first writing, and I felt like it was very interesting to see my books filtered through the life experience of someone else. And so, generally speaking, if they were reasonable, they can either like or hate the book or whatever. I just sort of I found it interesting. So, no guillotine, no stocks. Every now and then I see one that's hilariously funny or delightfully confirmational about the work I do. So, everyone has a right to their opinion. And, I don't like meanness. I would never write a mean review for someone else.
Yeah.
Don't appreciate meanness for any particular reason. It doesn't make any sense. But it's okay to say you don't like it.
Yeah.
Or you love it. Love it.
Amen.
I only named and shamed one person, and that was the lady that was doing my hair the morning I got married, who decided to take another client at the last minute. And then my husband was like, "You can't name and shame," and I'm like, "But that lady."
Yeah.
So I go to my honeymoon. She did my hair, but then my bangs were like this long, and I'd been waiting for her to cut them, and I was just like, so mad. So mad.
Right.
I should have
Amen.
just bought some barber scissors and put myself out of my misery, but what are you gonna do?
Very sure. Awesome. And so, last question for today is favorite podcast, and why is it Writers Drinking Whiskey?
Because there's whiskey involved.
Amen.
Because you let us talk for hours when no one else will listen to us.
Because writers need other writers.
Yeah.
For real.
Yeah.
We're not
Amen.
crazy. And when we get together, we feel less crazy.
It does help.
Right.
I am crazy, but I enjoy the validation of people saying I'm not crazy. So
Yeah, very, very, very true. So awesome. So thanks so much. So let me double check the chat here. I think we're good. So thanks so much everybody for joining. David, who left us already, but Gabi, Linda, and Vaughn. Thanks so much, guys, for joining in. And anyone watching, thanks so much again for you guys joining. And I think we'll conclude it. Thanks so much, guys. You guys have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to meet all of you.
You too.
See
It's
you.
always a delight to be part of this. So thank you, and take care, everybody.